Greetings everyone. Welcome to Narayana's. This is a part of daily news analysis in which we select certain articles from the Hindu as well as Indian Express and try to do a detailed analysis of the articles. The first article that we have selected is A New Judicial Imagination. It is from the Indian Express, page number 9. Second is Calibrating a Strategy for India's Future Growth. It is from the Hindu, page number 8. The third article is Assam to take action against those who forged papers to be in NRC. It is from the Hindu, page number 12. The fourth article is 21.15 lakh applications received under PM Vishwakarma scheme, says Skill Ministry. It is from the Hindu, page number 14. The fifth article, Flight to Well-being. It is from the Indian Express, page number 8. Now, let us start our analysis. It has been 50 years since the Supreme Court has propounded the basic structure as a doctrine. This basic structure as a doctrine was propounded in the year 1973 by the Supreme Court in the Kesavanandana Bharati case. Now let us look into what basic structure is and why is there a need for certain changes in the basic structure doctrine to make it more effective and to increase the trustworthiness of the Supreme Court, or nothing but the judiciary, in which Supreme Court has a major role to play. The title of the topic is A New Judicial Imagination. The relevance, doctrine of basic structure, and syllabus, GS paper 2, basic structure. We have previous year questions on the basic structure. For example, consider the following statement. The Constitution of India defines its basic structure in terms of the federalism, secularism, fundamental rights, democracy, etc. This statement is false because Constitution doesn't define basic structure. It is actually the Supreme Court which has defined what basic structure is, though it is not clear. It is a part of the judicial innovation, where judiciary, through its interpretations power, which has been vested to it as per the provisions of the Constitution, has innovated basic structure as an important doctrine to uphold the Constitution. If you look at the previous year questions, mains, Parliament's power to amend the Constitution, and starting from inventing the basic structure doctrine, etc., we have questions that are being asked from the basic structure. So it is important for examination perspective as well. The context obviously is celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Kesavanandana Bharati case, in which Supreme Court has propounded basic structure doctrine. Now, time and again what we have seen is the validity and the utilization of the basic structure doctrine by the Supreme Court. Now let us look into why it is important. What is basic structure? As the name itself suggests, it is the basic, nothing but the foundation. And this is the core part of the Constitution that is to be upheld by the judiciary. So, Supreme Court has determined that there are certain fundamental features of the Constitution that are to be upheld to see that the Constitution is safeguarded or the constitutional principles are adopted in the operation of institutions of this country. Ultimately, the country is run as per the provisions of the Constitutions, in which certain principles are core, supreme. That is what this article is about. Basic structure is that article. So basic structure is, for example, secularism. India has diversity. We cannot live in harmony without having peace, tolerance. Secularism as a principle provides exactly that. If we don't have secularism, there is a possibility of rift between different religions. So the Constitution, as you know, has envisioned to promote brotherhood, that is harmony. So, these are certain fundamental principles. Without them, you cannot expect to live in harmony and in peace in this country. So, upholding them are important. Supreme Court has thus taken step to uphold them. There are various principles within the basic structure like rule of law, equality, right to live with dignity, etc., that are considered supreme when compared to other principles. And what are these principles is ultimately interpreted by the Supreme Court. So, Supreme Court decides what are the constituent parts of the basic structure. It is still not clear the exact terms of what are to be considered basic structure. It is left to the Supreme Court to decide so and so are part of the basic structure. So, the foundations could actually be traced to the Dietrich Konrad, who is a German and has proposed that the core of the structure, the core structure is to be protected at any cost. Thus, while tinkering with the core structure, one has to be careful. Like for example, we cannot do away with the secularism because India is a plural country. And it emphasized, that is the Dietrich Konrad has emphasized stability and preserve the essence of the constitutional principles. So without them, you cannot expect the constitution to be safe or the constitutional principles to be upheld in the country. Without safeguarding them, you cannot expect the country will be run or country could be run as per the provisions of the constitution, because they are being violated, because the core itself is being violated. Now, what are the pivotal pillars? It constrains power. What is basic structure? Ultimately, it shows that so and so principles are important and no one could violate it. It might be legislature, it might be executive, even it might be the judiciary. No one has the power to violate these principles. Thus, what we are doing is we are imposing restrictions upon the institutions of this country. Like, for example, the executive or the legislature, that is the parliament, cannot frame a law to do away with secularism. Now, even parliament cannot do away with it. In essence, we are curbing the power of parliament to indulge in those kinds of activities. And we are preserving the core tenets on account of it, because we are declaring that so and so cannot be violated at any cost. And thus we are upholding the supremacy of the constitution. Thus the country is run by the provisions of the constitution on account of declaring so and so as a basic structure of the constitution. Now, the important features of it are, we emphasize the constitutional integrity. That is, we are saying to the public, to the society, that the constitutional principles are to be protected in word, in spirit, and thus we are ruled by the constitution. Then evolutionary principles. What we are also committing to is, we will evolve as per the socio-economic changes of the society. Right? For example, what we are seeing in the society, or what we are seeing in the way institutions like Supreme Court, legislature, etc., they are trying to make changes as per the changes of the society. For example, earlier we have Section 377, which imposed ban upon the same-sex sexual intercourses. Now, we upheld that they have the right to indulge in sexual intercourse despite they being from the same sex. Now, how this came? Because we are giving more and more priority to the individual rights, individual way of life, thus upholding the right to live with dignity, upholding the freedom of expressions. So as we go along, we evolve as a society, and this basic structure will try to accommodate these changes, and Supreme Court will enhance the rights of individuals or rights of any particular institutions. In a way, if we give rights to any particular entity or individual, then we impose restrictions on the other entity or other individual to say that you cannot intrude in so and so matters. For example, now state cannot intrude into the sexual relationship between the same-sex couples. So in this way, we have curbed the limitations upon the center or executive. It might be central government or state government. And we have increased the freedom of the individual who could now indulge in the same-sex relations. Thus, it is evolutionary. And in a way, we are giving judicial review and interpretation power. Ultimately, basic structure provides more room to Supreme Court or judiciary. Thus, the power of the Supreme Court has been enlarged on account of the basic structure doctrine, and now through its interpretation power, it could actually determine the constitutionality of the decisions. It might be the executive or it might be the parliament. Next, it will balance powers, because we have checks and balances. How? Because we are clearly defining that so and so is the extent of power that is to be exercised by various institutions. It might be legislature, it might be executive, it might be judiciary. So the power limit is clearly stated. If that is stated, then we have clear checks and balances. Supreme Court could balance executive and legislature will be working in harmony. Why? Because legislature will clearly state the extent of powers that are to be executed by the executive. Next, the adaptive interpretations. Similar to the evolutionary principles, we adapt over a period of time, and thus our constitutional principles will be upheld. At the same time, society could be governed in a smoother and effective manner. Now, what are the concerns? The concerns is the basic structure is vague and elusive. That is, we cannot clearly comprehend what this basic structure is. In fact, Supreme Court in itself has evolved this basic structure doctrine over a period of time. It has involved various principles as basic structure again and again through various case judgments, case laws, and interpretation of the provisions of the Constitution. So what happens in effect is we do not know the extent of the power that the Supreme Court exerts. That is one of the reasons for judicial activism judicial adventurism. And what this in effect means is the power of the Supreme Court is far higher when compared to the power of the executive and legislature. And in effect, if we are giving more power to the judiciary, it will destabilize the balance of power. Why? Because judiciary has got more power. And executive and legislature too have the power. Despite we have the principles like parliamentary principles, federalism, democracy, etc., where the power of the executive and legislature are also determined to be part of the basic structure. Again, what we are seeing is the Supreme Court or the judiciary has got more power because ultimately it is the will of the Supreme Court, or it is how the Supreme Court interprets the provisions of the Constitution that is what considered more valid, right? And if you look at the NJSC judgment to argue the case in a point in which NJSC Act was brought by the Parliament to reform the procedure of appointment of the judges. But what we have seen is Supreme Court has struck down NJSC Act on the ground that it violates the judicial independence, which it argues is the part of the basic structure. And thus, in effect, it has violated other principles for safeguarding or for upholding the principle of independence of judiciary, which it considers as basic structure. What about the parliamentary form of democracy, which is also a part of the basic structure? So, ultimately, Supreme Court has been given more power through this doctrine. So, what we require is a clear articulation of what this basic structure is and how to deal with the matters where there is a clash or contradiction in terms of the perspectives built up or developed by Supreme Court and other wings, right? For example, how to deal with judiciary, executive and legislature balance of power. As you know, balance of power is an important doctrine put forward even by the directive principles of state policy. Thus, we have to clearly state it. We need to have more clearer vision. We need to have more transparency. Also, we need to uphold the trust in the public with respect to judiciary. That could be only done by doing away with the systems like collegium system or reforming the collegium system which appoints judges. Because the power that is vested in the judiciary is far higher to compromise the constitutional principles or to simply put more power in the hands of judiciary to uphold the constitution. But how the judiciary works is also important. So, in this way, we need to move forward, we need to be more clearer, more transparent, and then only the public will have trust over how the constitutional principles are being upheld. Now, let us look into another article. This article is on how to attain higher growth rate levels and sustain it for India. As you know, India has huge population and we need to deliver higher growth rates to employ more Indians and see that they contribute to the growth of this country. Now let us look into the title of the topic. The title is Calibrating a Strategy for India's Future Growth. The relevance, economic growth, savings and investment, challenges to growth. So we'll get to know how to attain growth rate levels. It is from the GS Paper 3, Indian Economy, and issues related to mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. We have previous year questions like, for example, economic growth in country X will necessarily have to occur if. So if you know the contributing factors for Indian economic growth rate, you will be able to answer this question. What is the context? The context is India's growth in 2023-24 is projected to be 7% as per the RBI system. Now, what is the problem is we are now shifting from export-led growth, which has driven the country's economic growth rates in the past years, especially China's growth miracle is on account of its export-led growth. It has exported to many countries. It has become an export hub, manufacturing hub, and also top of the global value chain, delivering products that are marketed to the rest of the countries. Exporting is one of the important strategies to deliver growth because you have higher markets, right? More market. For example, if India is producing goods and it is selling only in India, then the market is limited. If we produce a goods that has demand in the rest of the world, then we have huge market. Thus, we could produce more, we could employ more individuals, and thus we could attain prosperity. But now gone are the days we're going to see the reason why export-led growth is not considered as a viable way of attaining high growth rates at this moment, at this juncture. Now, that is the reason why there is fall in exports. We have witnessed our exports to fall from as high as 25% in 2014 to 15 as a percentage of GDP to 22.8% by 2022-2023. Now, savings and investments. India has high reliance on savings. Domestic savings is an important component that provides the necessary capital to grow in India. And the domestic savings at the moment is at 29%. The investment rate, that is gross fixed capital formation, is at 29.2% of GDP as of 2022-2023, which has increased from the low of 24.2% in 2021. So we are seeing rise in saving rates. At the same time, we are seeing rise in capital formation rate as well. So savings are nothing but the part of the income which is left out after the consumption expenditure as well as the taxes that are imposed upon that savings by the government. So whatever that is left out is savings. So what do we do with the savings? We deposit them in the bank, and what the banks do? Banks give loans either to the companies or the individuals, whoever they might be. If the company take the loan, that is generally for expanding their business activities. That is, they take the loans to expand production. How to expand production? They will employ more individuals, more human resources, or they will buy assets through which they could increase the production, like for example, machinery. And at the same time, households buy bonds and stocks from the capital market. This will ultimately transform into production, right? For example, if I am buying more bonds, that means companies are taking loans. So companies give their bonds through the stock exchange market, and thus they will get the money at some interest rates, depending upon the ability of the company to lure the customers to buy their bonds, and thus it will again be like borrowing from the public. And what is this gross capital formation? Gross fixed capital formation is important. It is nothing but the assets that are produced, which is acquired by the resident producers, that is the producers, for a specified period. And the main intent is to increase the production, used for production activity, increase the production. Like we have seen earlier itself, it is nothing but like buying machinery or other sorts of ways to increase the production activity. So gross fixed capital formation is important. It is an indicator that the companies are trying to produce more, to sell more, and ultimately for that purpose they are investing more money, and that investment is important because it increases India's GDP. Now, what are the challenges to the growth? The challenge to the growth is the deglobalization trend. As we have seen, the export-led growth is no longer that viable as was the case earlier. It doesn't mean that it is completely unviable, but we cannot rely exclusively or excessively on export-led growth. Added to it, we have geopolitical conflicts. We have Russia-Ukraine issue. We have Israel-Hamas conflicts. So these are having an impact on the global economic scenario. And thus, we are seeing lessening of the global growth rates, economic growth rates at the global level. Then the reduced exports, as we already seen. Now, the reaching the peak of the demographic dividend. So one thing that has India, which is giving a positive picture to the Indian economy, is the population and employment trends. So the working age population is set to tank to the level of 68.9% in the year 2030. So we have this space or the years in which we could utilize the potential of the population at its peak, and especially in the year 2030, because 68.9% of the population is within the working age. So they could be employed and their services could be utilized to increase the India's economic growth rate. Worker population ratio as per the periodic labor force survey data 2022-2023 is increased to 51.8%. Then we have dependency ratio, which is declining year by year, and it is at the lowest 31.2%. So that if the dependency ratio is declining, it's an indication that the people who are depending upon the population, it might be their family or others, like for example from the government, etc., they are not contributing to the economic growth rate. they are relying on the others to serve their needs, like for their daily requirements or whatever the requirements might be. Thus, that will reduce the consumption expenses and thus give more population for working and thus increase our growth rates. Added to it, we have these climate goals, which have the ability to hamper economic growth. How? We have to reduce carbon as per the requirements of INDCs, intended nationally determined contributions, which India has committed at the global level at the climate conference. We have to act upon it and thus we have to reduce the carbon emissions. And India has set to take various initiatives to reduce it. One such is One Solar, One World, One Grid. So we want to transform to the reliance on renewable energy rather than production of electricity through fossil fuels like coal. Still, our dependence on coal is quite high, but we have committed that we are going to reduce the electricity production through coal and move to renewable sources of electricity production. These will obviously have the ability to reduce unemployment, but the problem is they are costly when compared to the fossil fuels like coal. Of course, there are many instances which have shown that reliance on renewable energy could also lead to reduction in electricity production costs, but we are not entirely sure because of certain supply chain glitches or the ability of country to secure land or to have enough storage infrastructure or transmission infrastructure to transmit the electricity produced through renewable sources, etc. Now, one is the Green Grid Initiative. Under Green Grid Initiative, we are trying to set up or build infrastructure that will transmit the electricity produced through renewable sources. Now, the way forward is non-agricultural growth. See, still, for close to 46% of the population is relying on agriculture for their livelihood. Over a period of time, what happens is they need to find their footing in other sectors. It might be manufacturing sector, it might be service sector, etc. For that, we need to provide more employment opportunities. Added to it, we should also tackle with the issues like the job losses that could occur on account of the technologies that have the ability to increase the productivity, at the same time reduce the number of personnel required to produce any product. For example, automation and AI increase the productivity. At the same time, it will reduce the employees required to produce a product. So for that purpose, we have to also see the possibility of job cuts on account of utilization of this new technology in production purposes. And thus, we have to increase skilling of the workforce so that they could be employed even though the technology upgradation is short. So, India has to bet big on skilling of the workforce. Then we have to boost employment and these in the green technologies, government initiatives, private sector engagement, educational institutes, etc. Then at the same time, India has to target fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit should be within the limit. Why? Because firstly, to have the financial stability at the global level, that means India has to show that its macroeconomic indicators are stable. If we have debt in sustainable limits, then the international investors will have confidence on Indian market. If India takes higher and higher debts, that is India incurs more and more debts, it might be government of India or state government. If India has higher debts, then obviously the confidence on India will be lesser and thus investments in India from the external market, it might be US, UK, etc., they will be lessened and thus that will impact our ability to attain higher growth levels. So we have to target fiscal deficit, and fiscal deficit, as you know, it should be 6% for center and state. It is not a final number. We do not know exactly the extent of numbers that we are supposed to target, but generally at the global level, there is a consensus that it should be within so and so limits. And debt to GDP ratio at 60%, combining both center and states. So this should be our target. And at the same time, we have to raise the savings rate as well as investments rate to the 35% of GDP. Of course, we are in the process of increasing the investment rate and savings rate. It is standing at the moment, as we have already seen, lesser than 35%. We have to try to attain to 35% of GDP. And we have to adopt new technologies that are environment friendly as well to meet the global demands and as well as global commitments of India. So all these strategies are to be adopted to actually see that we are attaining higher growth rate levels. So this completes the topic. Now let us look into another topic. This article is on the implementation of Assam Accord and NRC issue. NRC, as the name suggests, it is a national registry of citizens that has a register of all the citizens of the country, of this nation, India. Added to it, how the government is supposed to deal with it. We are also going to look into the background of the present Assam Accord and try to put the things in perspective. The title of the topic is Assam to take action against those who forced papers to be in NRC. That means Assam government has found that certain documents provided by the individuals who claim that they are part of this country in Assam have forged documents, that is, documents which are forged or duplicate documents. The title of the topic is itself an indication of the issues that the Assam government is facing to implement Assam Accord. In this, we are going to learn about the Assam Record, National Citizen Registry, NRC, that is National Register of Citizen, then Citizenship Amendment Act 2019. And the topic is of relevance because it is from the GS2, Indian Constitution, in which citizenship is a chapter. Citizenship is quite a sensitive issue. It is necessary to determine who is a citizen of this country. If the citizen is against the national interest or has an agenda to foment violence or to create instability in any particular country, that will entirely impact the India's internal security and its standing in the international level as well, its ability to move forward. At the same time, extending citizenship to any individual of this country or from other country who reside in India itself is a sensitive issue. Why? Because the citizens or because the people of that state might not like the intervention from other cultures because the possibility of the domination of the individuals from other culture in the local culture. That leads to subordination of the cultures. Sometimes that we see because of the power rifts that arise on account of the varied sections that live in that particular area on account of the migration. That is one of the grievances raised by the people of Assam, where they claim that the people from the Bangladesh have come and settled in the Assam region and they are dominating in terms of economics, politics, society aspects, etc. And thus leading to the inability of the locals to actually capture, to actually utilize the potential that the state has created. Also, the conservation of the culture. So it is quite a sensitive issue. We do not exactly know the kind of path that we are supposed to traverse in these sensitive matters. We have previous year questions on it as well. For example, with reference to India, only one citizenship and one domicile, etc. So the question on citizenship. So the context is nothing but the people have doubtful nationality. Why they have doubtful nationality? Because they have forged the documents to show that they are citizens of this country. Now, NRC, as the name suggests, it is a register of the citizens of this country to show that they are nationals of India. And the thing is that it was conducted in the year 1951 and from then on, it was not conducted again. And NRC as an exercise is not uncommon in democratic countries because various countries do the exercise again and again to have the numbers, the number of citizens, etc., the number of people who have illegally migrated from other countries to this country. For example, the country which is conducting NRC exercise. Now, NRC in Assam case is unique. Now, there is voice from various intelligentsia people as well as judiciary, etc., to conduct NRC in the country, especially with Assam. We are going to see why there is a special case for Assam and why it is to be heard. The cutoff date for NRC of Assam is 1971. Why? Because we have a 1971 war in which both India and Pakistan fought, that ultimately led to Pakistan being bifurcated and a new state of Bangladesh was created on account of it. Because earlier, even Bangladesh was part of Pakistani state, it is East Pakistan, whereas the present Pakistan that resides on the western side is considered West Pakistan. But somehow incidences have culminated in such a manner that it got bifurcated and India was the major player in bifurcating, in dividing the country into two. And that too was in support from the East Pakistani people and they are grateful to India's support. But the problem is during those periods of time what we have seen is that people from the Bangladesh, the present or at that point of time the East Pakistan have entered into India to safeguard themselves from the attacks of the Western Pakistani army. The army was atrocious, and its ground level actions have led to death and destruction. That too, many innocent people have lost their life in the East Pakistan. That led to resentment, and ultimately people rose up in anger, and they collaborated with Indian army and expelled the West Pakistan. This is the background story to it. But the problem is, their migration to the Assam as well as West Bengal has led to a lot of resentment among the local population. But that the number of people from the from other regions are increasing their number, and that ultimately might impact their ability to conduct affairs in a proper manner, to conserve their culture, or to avail the opportunities of the socio-economic developmental aspects that takes place in their own states. So that is one of the reasons why we have set 1971 as a date. So in the 1971 India-Bangladesh war, immigration in Assam is a major issue to them, and it is still an issue. Okay, if the numbers are high, then obviously their ability to dictate what happens in the state is also higher. So what happened is, on account of this vented anger and the widespread rebellion that we have seen in Assam, especially after 1971 war, the government of India has entered into an accord with the local population on 15th August 1985, which we called as Assam Accord. And the parties or the participants who have finally broken this deal were the Indian government, All Assam Student Union, and All Assam Gana Sangham Parishad. There's a need to remember these names. What was the agreement? The agreement was, the cutoff date was set out to be 1971, as we already seen. And the people who are going to get the full citizenship are the people who migrated to Assam between 1951 and 61. So there was a deal to actually extend citizenship to the migrants as well, even though they might be illegal. But after 1961, the atrocities in the East Pakistan has increased, that led to widespread migration from the East Pakistan to India, that is the Bangladesh, the erstwhile Bangladesh, to India. So what happened in 1961 to 1971, whoever might be the individuals who have migrated to India were given citizenship, but the voting right was halted until 10 years. Then they had the voting rights as well. But whoever might come to India after 1971 or may have come to India after 1971, they will not be granted the citizenship. So that is an agreement. And if an individual is not able to get the citizenship right on account of not having proper documents to verify that he is also a citizen of this country, and the government has found that he hasn't got the proper documentation to extend citizenship, then he could appeal the decision taken by any board or any institution to Foreigners Tribunal's Order 1939. Under it, we have the Foreigners Tribunal Board. Now, what is the issue? The issue is, from 2005, several NGOs have filed a petition that the Assam Accord has not been implemented properly. So, despite the agreement taking in the year 1985, what we have seen is the implementation is poor. And as you know, the migrants are pouring in from the Bangladesh. The numbers are rising actually. That is causing a lot of worry among the local population. So what they have done is they have gone to the Supreme Court and appealed that the NRC should be implemented in word and spirit. That led to 2013 Supreme Court judgment to give direction to Assam to implement the NRC. It is quite a challenging exercise to verify the documents of the entire population of the Assam. So it's a time-taking and time-consuming process. That too involves a lot of authentication of the documents. That too has a scope for errors, sometimes inclusion errors, sometimes exclusion errors. Sometimes individual might have the proper document, but he is not able to convince that these are proper documents, etc. Sometimes they might not have the documents despite being a legal citizen of this country. That too is a worry. So this is quite a sensitive issue to implement as well. So, in accordance with Citizenship Act 1955 and Citizenship Rule 2003, the NRC exercise was completed in the year 2019, starting from 2015. So, Assam government was able to complete the exercise. But what is the problem? The problem is more than 19 lakhs individuals who are residing in Assam were not able to prove that they are citizens of this country out of the 3.29 crore applicants in Assam. So now how to deal with the issue of 19 lakhs individuals who are not able to verify that they are part of this country. And as you know, they could go to foreign tribunals of Assam, but resolution takes a lot of time and we have to see the proper issue. And the other thing is that government has not accepted that this list is final. So government still has doubts of the authenticity of the process that they have undertaken to determine the citizenship of the individuals who have applied for citizenship. And so what it has done is, instead of outrightly expelling the individuals who might not have the citizenship as per the implementation of NRC, government has gone to the Supreme Court for giving time to get the corrected NRC, to verify and see that there is a corrected NRC. Now let us look into the Citizenship Amendment Act. Why this is important? The importance of it is the persecuted minorities from countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, for example, Hindu population in Afghanistan has known to face atrocities again and again from the majoritarian section there, even in Pakistan. So these minorities require protection, which they are not able to avail in their own state. If their own state is not able to protect their rights, their basic freedoms, and instead it is meddling into their affairs and creating trouble to live a peaceful life, not conducive to have a meaningful and dignity-full existence, then obviously they will try to find residence in other countries. So many times they try to flee from their country and find refuge in other countries. One such country is India. And as per the Citizenship Amendment Act, India extends citizenship rights to the individuals who come, or the persecuted minorities that in terms of religion, their numbers are lower and they are persecuted by the majority section. From these three countries are to be provided citizenship in the country if they apply for Indian citizenship December 31st, 2014, then they will be given citizenship. Now, what this act makes indirectly is the illegal migrants will be granted citizenship under the act, which was not the case earlier. And the cutoff date was fixed earlier 25th March 1971 for Assam. But in this case, even the people who might have come from the Bangladesh have the citizenship rights. You have to remember this. Under Citizenship Amendment Act, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Parsis and Christians could apply for citizenship. Muslims cannot apply it. And from the migrants, illegal migrants from the Bangladesh, there are both Hindus and Muslims. So Hindus who are from Bangladesh could apply for citizenship, but Muslims cannot. But this too is worrisome for Assamese people because they think that the Bangladeshis, that is Hindu Bangladesh, have the numbers as well. They could actually impact their living. And thus it has become a sensitive issue that actually led to widespread protests and violence in Assam. So in response to it, what Union government has done is, it didn't completely exclude Assam from implementation, but certain tribal areas, that is, it has excluded tribal areas of Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura from the ambit of the act, considering that the illegal migrants have actually or might have actually entered into these states. And thus, it is not only a violation of Assam Accord, but not giving due regard to the agreement. So this is a sensitive issue. As of now, the case stands here. Now let us look into the possibilities what might occur in the future. So this completes the explanation. Now let us look into another article. This topic deals with the PM Vishwakarma scheme. It is nothing but to promote traditional arts and see that we could create a market for them, and so that they could sell their products out of the traditional arts that they utilize to produce traditional products that are in demand in the market. So let us look into the scheme. Schemes are important, especially that deal with the social issues. As you know, unemployment levels are high in India. One of the ways through which we could reduce the unemployment levels is by giving an opportunity to the crafts. Now let us look into the scheme. The title of the topic is 21.15 lakh applicants received under PM Vishwakarma scheme, says Skill Ministry. So, what you will be able to know here is the ministry that implements this scheme is the Ministry of Skills and Development, and it is a scheme of the central government. The relevance of the topic, we will be able to know the PM Vishwakarma Yojana and government initiatives and schemes. Okay, it is a part of government schemes and UPSC syllabus for welfare of the vulnerable sections. The context, PM Vishwakarma scheme has received over 21 lakh applications so far. So 21 lakh individuals or people have applied for availing the benefits under the scheme. That is the context. Now, what is it? It is a central sector scheme. As the name suggests, it is completely funded by the central government. So that is why called as central sector scheme. And what it will do is provide end-to-end support. That means comprehensive support. Almost all aspects that are required for production of any product under the traditional skills and final ultimate delivery to the consumer. So end-to-end services are provided in the scheme to traditional artisans and craft people. There are multiple traditional arts, like for example, carpenter, boat maker, etc. So all the eligible trades are mentioned here in this diagram. Now, the scheme was originally conceptualized in the Union Budget of 2023. Just remember the initial year or the year when the scheme has started. These are also asked again and again in the preliminary examination. Beneficiaries are individuals who are skilled in traditional craftsmanship, and it is not restricted only to tribals. It is restricted to OBC community or whatever the community might be that is indulgent in any crafts. Eligibility criteria, these are also important. The provisions, the details, the minute details are also asked in the examination. You could use them so that you could eliminate options in the examination. An artisan or craftsperson working with hands and tools is the one who are eligible to initiate applications and get benefit. Of course, anyone could initiate the application, but to be recognized or to be considered a beneficiary. And age should be 18 years. And it should be a family-based traditional trade mentioned in the scheme. The schemes, whatever the trades that are recognized under the scheme have been mentioned here. And in the organized sector or self-employed basis, whatever it might be. The minimum age, as we already seen, it is 18 years. Okay. Now, about the PM Vishwakarma scheme continuation, the eligibility criteria also is you shouldn't take any loans or any credits under different schemes implemented by the central government. Okay. There are various other schemes to promote entrepreneurship, marketing or product development, etc. Some of the schemes are PM Swanidhi, PM Employment Generation Program, Mudra Scheme, etc. These two provide credit facilities. So, if you are availing benefits under the scheme, you will not be eligible to get the benefits from the PM Vishwakarma scheme. And only one member of the family is eligible to get the benefits. This too is important. Then, a person in government service is not eligible to get the benefits. Now, the outlay, rupees 13,000 crore have been set aside for implementing this scheme. The features of the scheme is recognition. So, skilling is also provided under the scheme, and if you undergo skilling process, you will be given Vishwakarma with a certificate and ID card. This is important. There is nothing but recognition. Recognition of the certificate. Then we have skilling. Skilling is also provided as you already seen, along with the stipend facility of rupees 500 per day. Then a toolkit incentive that is nothing but close to 15,000 rupees for the tools that are required for performing the occupation. Credit support is also provided. As you know, money is required for initiating any project. So this too requires money. So individual beneficiary is also going to get money. Credit. Credit means he has to repay it. It is also collateral free. So there is no need for leveraging any assets to get the loan. No need for leveraging. And the collateral free loan is provided to the tune of rupees 1 lakh for the first tranche. So the first time he gets 1 lakh and then again rupees 2 lakh. That too in concessional interest rates, as the name suggests, lower interest rates. So this is nothing but the burden that is borne by the government. And the government backed credit guarantee fees. So if there is a possibility of default in payment by the individual who has taken loan under the scheme, the government gives a guarantee that it is going to repay the money to the banks. So that provides an incentive for the banks to implement the scheme and extend credit to the individual beneficiaries. There is also an incentive for digital transaction. This is to promote digitalization of the payment, and ₹1 per transaction and up to 100 transactions per month. So these two you have to remember. This two is a component of the scheme. The component of the schemes are to be remembered. And marketing support is also provided. As I said, end-to-end support is provided under the scheme. And in marketing support, we have quality certification, branding and promotion, e-commerce linkage, trade fairs, advertising, and other marketing activities. So whatever it is nothing but for marketing, branding, etc. Everything provides an opportunity for the further product to have a foothold in the market. This completes this topic. Now let us look into another topic. The topic, flight to well-being. As the name itself suggests, it wants to promote flying for well-being. So flying here with respect to drone under the Drone Dii Scheme. Well-being because it promotes well-being in terms of prosperity or development, etc. So that is the scheme. So we are going to deal about the Drone Dii Scheme under this article, and it is relevant for economy. If you look at the previous year question, to obtain the full benefits of demographic dividend. Here we are dealing with an important section of the demography, that is women, and harnessing the potential of women is important to realize the full growth capability of Indian economy, also to promote the development among the women. Thus, this will be relevant to this particular scheme. The context, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has recently launched the scheme, Drone Dii Scheme, at Vikasit Sankalp Yatra. Now, what is this scheme? The objective is women empowerment. Why? Because in this scheme, we are going to allocate drones to the women, and thus what happens is one of the consequences, it will be creating 2 crore Lakpati rural women. So we want to create Lakpatis among the women, that too in rural areas. This is one of such initiatives under which we want to promote the prosperity among the women, that is making them Lakpatis. It is one such initiative under which government is of the belief that they will witness higher incomes. How? We use the technology in the sense the drone technology, that will ultimately empower women because it will create livelihood to the women. This is nothing but empowerment, economic security. And thus, it will enhance farm practices because ultimately this drone technology will be utilized in the farming, in the rural areas. It might be seeding or supplying of fertilizers, pesticides to the farm, that is the crops of the farm. The benefits is it will supply drones to 15,000 women self-help groups. So what are they going to do with these drones? They are going to rent it to the farmers for agricultural purposes, as we already seen. This scheme will be complemented by the network of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Samriddhi Kendras. So it is nothing but the extension services provided to the farmers so that they could be able to adopt new technologies and new practices to improve farming practices in India. So it will be complemented by this network to enhance the utilization of technology. The benefits, it will reshape rural economy as it will increase the income levels of the rural women, and it will present women a chance to participate in new agricultural revolution. Agriculture, it will modernize agriculture, it will increase the productivity. Why? Because we could efficiently deliver pesticides, fertilizers, etc. to where it is required, reducing the human hours that are being spent as of now. Because even today we are using manual ways to deliver the pesticides, fertilizers, etc. to the agricultural farm. Now we could utilize the drone technology and we could use it efficiently in lesser time and thus reduce the human efforts, at the same time increase the productivity and production. And reduce the irrational use of fertilizers as efficiency of utilization increases. The health of the farmers can be protected because now instead of manual efforts, we could use the drone. Because many times what happens is the pollution as well as the toxicity of pesticides, fertilizers, etc. impacts the health of the farmers. In many cases, we also witnessed the death of the farmers as well. And economy, it will reduce fertilizers imports and thus it will reduce the cost incurred in terms of importing. So this completes the article. Now let us look into the question, that is prelims question as well as mains question. Now let us look into the first prelims question. Consider the following statements. India is not party to 1951 Refugee Convention. This is true. But it has National Refugee Protection Framework. This is false. Now, National Register of Citizens of India except Assam is updated only once in 1951. This is true, as we already seen it. Under the provisions of the Foreigners Act 1946, only foreigners' tribunals are empowered to declare a person as foreign. This is true. So, now choose the correct statement from the above. As you have seen, the first statement is false. The answer is A, only 2 and 3. Second question, consider the following statements about PM Vishwakarma Yojana. It is a central sector scheme. True. Beneficiary must be 18 years, as you already seen, and not have availed similar government loans in the past 5 years. As you know, we have various schemes like Mudra, etc. And if you are a beneficiary of these schemes, you cannot avail the same from PM Vishwakarma scheme. So this too is true. The scheme is partially funded by central government. This is false. Central sector scheme itself is an indication that the complete funding of the scheme is done by the central government. Which of the statement given above is or are correct? The answer is A, 1 and 2 only. Consider the following statements. Namo Drone Dii Scheme will train rural women in the use of drones in agriculture. This is true. The scheme is a part of larger project of creating 2 crore Lakpati women in rural India. This too is true. So which of the above statement given is or are correct? The answer is C, both of the above statements. Which of the following is not a component of the gross fixed capital formation? A, investment in new buildings and infrastructure. This is a part of the capital formation. Purchase of new software and intellectual property. This too is true. Expenditure on research and development. This too is true. Consumption of intermediate goods and services. This is false. So the answer is D, because capital formation is nothing but ways through which we try to expand production. So we invest in either infrastructure or softwares, etc. Ultimately, they increase the productivity as well as production. Consider the following page. Doctrines. Doctrine of basic structure preserve the essence of constitutional principles. This is true, as we already seen about the core principles that are to be protected as per the basic structure of the Constitution. Doctrine of harmonious construction, legal interpretation to reconcile apparently conflicting laws or provisions within a statute or constitution. This is true. The name itself suggests harmonious construction. So harmony among the various laws or various provisions, so that when there is a contradiction among them, we try to find a balanced ground, so that we could, harmony is the name itself suggests, we need to find a balanced path, so that if the principles are contradictory to one another, we should try to find a balance between them, and so that we could accommodate both the principles rather than uphold one principle over the other. Next, doctrine of colorable legislation prohibits the legislature from enacting laws that are beyond its constitutional authority. This too is true. So we want to limit such that they are not beyond the constitutional authority. How many pages is or correct? The answer is C, all the 3. Now let us look at the mains practice question. India's economic growth trajectory will face challenge in upcoming decades. In the light of that, analyze the evolving global economic scenario and its implications for India's future growth strategy. Introduction, write down India's economic aspirations, that we want to become a $5 trillion economy, and why favorable global economic trend is important for India. Why? Obviously, because for exports or for investments, etc., we need favorable global economic environment. Now, body, part 1, write global challenges. As we have seen, protectionism, that is actually leading to deglobalization, and protectionism is nothing but imposing higher tariffs on the products, and thus our exports are becoming more and more costlier. Technological shift, we are using new tools like AI, big data, etc. These have the ability to increase productivity, in essence, reduce the employment generation. That is one of the scare we have. And then investment inflow, right? We have seen that the global economic scenario is actually leading to dipping of investments and geopolitical realignment, as we have seen, due to the conflicts that arise in the international arena, like Ukraine, Russia. Part 2, write down implications. what implications it will hold. On trade, we are seeing a reduction in the global economic. We have seen the reduction of Indian exports. Supply chain volatility. For example, the supply chain was excessively concentrated in China. Now we want to see that it is diversified. So India has to play its part. Next, investment and employment go hand in hand. More the investment, more the employment. But what we are seeing is declination that ultimately impacts the India's economic recovery. Though India is witnessing or clocking high growth rates, the actual potential is far higher. We need to realize higher potential, then only we could expect employment to be productive and employment to be more diverse in nature, which we are not able to cater at the moment. In the conclusion, write down strategic planning and adaptive policies are to be utilized by India in terms of increasing its growth rate, like for example, increasing the saving rate, increasing the investment rate, increasing the capital formation, increasing skilling that we have seen, etc., etc., to utilize its full potential. This completes the article. Please do like, share, and subscribe our channel. Thank you.